All right, welcome everyone. My name is Yukio Ida, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Advisory Council with Donna Marino. And welcome to our April meeting of the Advisory Council. Again, so glad that you are all here. Please make sure that you are muted if you're not speaking. And like I said before, feel free, get snacks, get drinks, be comfortable. We have an hour and a half together. So today is our April meeting. We have one more meeting left in June for this academic year. And for today, let's just get started with a little bit of video. A lot of schools have done multiple first days at this point, you know, in the transitions. And like it says here, it is all too much a read. So let's just take a moment and notice and recognize and celebrate all the ways in which we have been brave and courageous in our actions over the last year. So here's a little bit of video for everyone to watch. It's short, it's quick, but really cute, and hope that, you know, we can just take a breath and yeah, you know, wallow in our too much a read, but also celebrate all the stuff that we've been able to do.
A brief dive for navigating too much to read. Some days life can be challenging. Seems to match you in a hurry. Sometimes you must declare it's all too much to read. Much to process, much to see, too much to handle, too much cat pee. I don't even own a cat. When you look at life and too muchery abounds, pause, listen to your breath and the way that sounds. Reach out to people, all the friends you can think of, because absurd times calls for absurd amounts of love. So remember, dear friend, there's no need to worry. Together we are more than enough for all the too much.
So there's a lot going on. And, you know, just like the video says, let's take a breath. And if you can, in the chat, throw in all the acts of courage, small and big, that you have been doing in the chat with your name, so that we can give absurd amounts of love right now, because that is what we need. So throw it in there. What are you doing? What's going on? Let's celebrate you, because together, like the video said, we are enough for this too muchery. Oh, thank you. Sharing love, lots of love. I know this technology is hard. Too many platforms to juggle, right? Showing positivity, even though we are struggling. Thank you. Reaching out, care packages, all awesome things. Oh, doing lots of Zoom, and I've learned so many new tech tricks. Yes, I would love like a handbook at the end of this, right? All the shortcuts, all the different ways to engage. Being a role model for my kids. Yes, yes, paying it forward, mentoring girls, awesome. I know these relationships are so hard to maintain, but we need the mentoring, we need the connections, we need that love. Jesse, thank you. Creating a youth mentoring program. That sounds awesome. 6th grade, 9th grade, all the different transitions. This sounds wonderful. Love to be able to hear more about that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Having brave conversations. Yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a lot going on. So we celebrate you. And again, together, when we come together like this, we are enough to combat this too muchery. So thank you so much, everyone, for for throwing in the chat what you're doing.
A brief dive for navigating.
All right, so today's agenda is short, but we've got a lot to cover. We just want to share with you that we were able to finalize the values and goals at the leadership level, thanks to all your input. So we'll just share that again, just to show what's been finalized, and we will get a partner organization highlight, which this time is CERC, the State Education Resource Center. So we'll be hearing from them, and a little bit of a report back from the innovation work groups that have been coming together to put a proposal together around parent leadership and communication and links to learning. So we will hear from each of the groups, and the big part of today is getting your input through breakout rooms about reopening and what we should be thinking about in terms of, you know, creating a plan for the next school year for this Connecticut Family School Partnership, and what, you know, programming or resources that we need to be developing. So this is the big part, and, you know, we really want to hear what's going on the ground from everyone, families and practitioners and, you know, stakeholders in education. So that'll be a big part of our convening today. And in closing, we will just talk a little bit about the next steps for the next school year, advisory council memberships. We'll take a little bit of time to take the evaluations for this meeting. So again, just trying to capture more of your input. So that is the agenda for today. And I'm going to pass it over to Donna, who will be just sharing with us the finalized CFSP values. Donna?
Welcome, everyone. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're going to talk about our values just again to review really where we want to come from. And values is really our roadmap to our plan. And we always want to keep these values in mind. And thank everyone for their input on these. We always want to be centered on the student growth, both academically and social emotional. We want to look at equity with everything that we do, so that we can grow family engagement and have the right resources and tools to promote policies and practices that advance racial and educational equity. We always focus on collaboration and partnership, and make sure that we're including everyone from the diverse communities that we live in. Next slide. So taking those values, we move towards our goals. And I guess when the original grant was put in, these were our goals, and we're still working on them, but the way they look as we develop over the years will look a little different. But we do want to focus on capacity building in the school districts. It's very important that the staff are open to partnerships, and that we sustain and bring family engagement practices and policy into action by building full, equal, and equitable partnerships. And we started that with the 7 Alliance districts, and we want to learn from them as we move ahead. And we want to focus on our English language learners, and have that intentional focus on equity. We want to continue to build those robust partnerships, centered on really parent voice as well as student voice. And by focusing on these high impact engagement practices with the Alliance schools, we're gonna learn from them and become more effective for everyone. Next slide. Our next slide is to build the capacity of families. And I guess when I talk about this, I like to tell you a little story about building capacity of families, because it's why I do what I do today. As I told them in the beginning, I'm at my son's house, and my son was a special ed student, and I'm taking care of his grandson today because they had their shots and they're not feeling so great. But my story about my son is he was special needs, and I learned very early that I had to become a strong advocate for children. And I took this course at CERC, which was very similar to PLTI, which taught me to be a leading advocate for children, and really was life-changing for me. And it made me do the work I do today to become involved. But I can say we need to help families be involved. It's not easy. It's very uncomfortable to sit at decision-making tables. You feel very unconfident, and you need the tools and strategies to build your confidence and be effective with your voice. So building capacity of families is my passion, and I'm really excited that it's the passion of this grant as we move ahead, because I know we're doing great things with PLTI, but we can do more, and we need to spread out throughout our state. So I'm excited about that as a goal. You can see my favorites. And then the next slide is the last goal is around the resource hub, and we talked about, you know, having that as a website, and we thought that's a great idea to have this place where parents can go and staff can go and find the most effective practices to implement around family engagement. But at the same time, as we talked more on that, we kind of said it's important to market. It's important to get the word out there. So as we move ahead, we might want to move that and expand that goal to include our social marketing networks and other ways to communicate and be effective at reaching our families. So thank you. That is all of our goals. And I'm going to turn it back to Yukio.
Great, thank you. So this next section is just understanding more about what our partner organizations are doing, and Nitza Diaz from the State Education Resource Center will be sharing about their work. And I'm going to stop share so that Nitza, if you were here.
Yes, I am. I'm going to share my screen. I'm sorry, I'm working on 2 screens. Give me 1 minute. Can you see that? Okay, so I'm moving.
Yes.
Okay. What about now? Is it good?
Yes, we can see you. Yep. For the screen.
My name is Nitza. Some of you know me, some of you may not know me, some of you may know CERC, some of you may not know CERC. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're currently doing as partners, and I'm just going to put our big three E so that you know a little bit in case you don't know what we do. So we are a quasi-public state agency created to support the State Board of Education around different areas, right? So one of the things we believe on equity, right? That all students need to have access to equitable education. We also believe in excellence. So the work we do at CERC is excellence, because if we're not excellent in what we do, studying our craft around professional development, training, coaching, those are one of the few big items that we do, then it's not going to show that equitable piece that we want to convey in education, right? So at CERC, we work a lot around racial equity, special education, working with families, English learners, and other areas as well. So that's in the nutshell what we do. So what are we doing for this grant? So for this grant, and I'm going to move this right here. For this grant, we are working with Craig around 2 things, right? One is as a district coach. So we have 2 districts and we are I'm supporting Stanford, for example, on family engagement, and Paquita, who's not here, she's supporting Windsor. So we work with those districts on family engagement area as a district coaches. The other thing we do, which is a professional development, I'm going to pass the slides and you'll see the descriptions and I will tell you dates, is the following, right? So at CERC, because we're a professional development agency, so our work plan for this year includes the following. The first one is the Latino Family Charlas. Those are conversations that we have been having. The first one was in February. They're monthly in Spanish only, with Latino families who are obviously only Spanish speakers, and talk about things like this. So we've talked to them about English learner rights. What are the rights of families for English learners, and what does the law say in terms of that? And that has been very enlightening, because the families, they're like, we didn't know that. So we have been doing that. We also have been doing family engagement with Latinos in order to navigate this educational system. So we have talked to them about, like, in back home, in whatever country you're from, the school is over here and we are over here, but in this country, that's how we say it, they need you to come in, right? So that they can understand why we're talking about family engagement. And the reason we say it like that is because when I translated the family engagement definition, they couldn't understand that they were equal partners. That doesn't happen in back home. There's a hierarchy, and I'm okay with that. So that definition kind of didn't work for them in a sense until you kind of get them to understand this is for the USA, and that's okay. They want you to come in. They expect you to come in, right? So that was like eye-opening, because in reality, like, we kind of didn't think about that cultural context. We thought we got it, but maybe not. Like, they were like, what do you mean equal? And then, what do you mean like equitable, like in Spanish? No, they're like teachers. We have to respect them, you know? So I thought that was interesting, that conversation. So, but they understood why it was done. Next April 22nd, we are doing learning loss. How can parents support children at their home? This one is quite interesting. We are looking at learning loss from a parental perspective. We have not asked the parents what learning loss is. Simple as that. We haven't done it in Spanish, English, Haitian, Creole. We haven't done that. We're making assumptions that parents view learning loss as X, Y, and Z, but we haven't asked them. So this session has, we have a name for it in Spanish called Ay Bendito. Ay Bendito is like, oh, Ay Bendito, I feel bad, I don't want to ask the school, blah, blah, blah. So that's for, you know, cultural context. As a Spanish speaker, as a Latina, there are those titles I can use because they will get it and they'll understand it's coming from someone that looks like them. And we are asking them, what is learning loss for you? How do you see this happening? How would you like to support the school? So this one is happening on April 22nd. Our Spanish speaking sessions happen at nighttime at 6:30 p.m. We do start late because a request from them was made very clear that they are cooking. If they are essential workers, they get home at 5. They're not turning on that computer at 5:30. So we have been accommodating that, and the numbers have been pretty good because the 6:30 p.m. gives them the time to feed their kids, get home, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm saying this to you guys because I want you to think about that. Are we truly accommodating our families, even if it's in Zoom, or are we doing the times based on what we think they want? Is 6:30 hard for me? Yeah. Is 7 p.m. hard? Yeah, but is it every day? No, so I'm okay doing that, but that's just my own personal view, right? So the next one we're doing, and this one is running April 22nd and April 26th, 2 separate dates because it's a one session divided into parts. And this one is called Black Lives Matter, a time for heal and a time for hope. And this is around the Black family and the family strengths, right? So what are the challenges that African-American and Black families face, right? And then we will discuss ways in which we can be culturally responsive, in which we can talk about unpacking tears and fears, the journey towards hope. How do we engage the whole family? So this one, it is about Black families, African-American families for this time and what that looks like, that professional development. And it's 2 sessions because it was, you know, one whole day. So we turned it into 1 hour and a half sessions. The next one we're doing is Black Lives Matter, Deep Culture, how does it show up in the classroom for Black and Brown children? So let's talk about what this looks like. How do we leverage family engagement, families of colors, right? What is that journey look like? Again, what is responsive be look like? How do we make instructions with this deep culture, understanding that Black and Brown children come with a culture as well that may or may not be the same, and racially and culturally and ethnically is different, and that's okay. So we are going to use the lens of deep culture, like those unconscious things that we were all taught that are part of who we are, in order for us to create a culturally responsive family engagement view. When I say like the unconscious deep culture, means like respect, right? How do I view respect? Like in my culture, my own, when I say my family culture, like you don't earn respect, you are given respect. So that for me has always been very interesting to hear. Like when I hear some teachers like, you have to earn respect. Why? So I struggle with that. So I like, Those little things we will talk about around this for Black and Brown children. And these ones are running on May 19th and May 21st. This is an affinity space only for Black families through a lens of care. And they are going to talk about self-care, what does this look like, and how to engage our own children without feeling guilty in many, many different ways. And we will do the same for Brown families. And this one, because it's affinity, is only designated for Black families on June 10th, for Latino families on June 17th. We are also doing a faith-based leaders engaging families for educational success. This is 2 presenters are coming in and going to talk about Education Sunday and other practices that are currently happening to engage families in their places of worship. This one is happening on May 3rd and in English, and May 3rd in Spanish, May 10th in English. Then we are working as well with a curriculum called Raising Highly Capable Kids, Train of Trainer. And this is a curriculum that was developed by the Search Institute that focuses on the developmental assets. So this facilitator training is designed to create facilitators to implement the training. And so this is a 5-week course that will be running on May 4th. So count that, May 4th, 5 weeks. The same curriculum is running for parents in Spanish right now for by their facilitators as well. And it's a long, in reality it's 12 weeks, but because it's quite long, they tried it out for twice a week, 6 weeks, starting at 7 p.m. And the parents came back, which was really interesting, but it was a later time. So this one is starting the last week of April on Tuesday nights, so like Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they will run this one in Spanish first, and then they will run the English one. This one is the training and the work for the parents with the facilitators, learning about what the assets are and applying those assets with their own children. And that's basically it.
Great, thank you, Nitza. There's a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
And I think, you know, please let us know where we can find all the information about how to register, or if, you know, where this information is, so that we can share it with our districts or with our families in our districts. And Amy Yarborough was asking, is BLM for families or educators?
For the one is for educators, but we never turn away families if it's the daytime sessions. It's for educators. We don't turn anyone away. Actually, we just don't turn anybody away. The only reason they're not gone live is because I'm not sure the Trumba registration system, how that works. So I did ask, and as soon as that goes live, because we have all of this created, I will forward it to Betsy, and Betsy can send it to all of you guys.
Great, thank you. Yeah, all the, any information that you can share with us about families registering for some of these programs or getting access to these programs, as well as, again, right, you guys are the professional development. So, you know, however way that we can get this information in the hands of the districts would be wonderful. So thank you so much. Are there any other questions?
So I see one question around registration for the family sessions. We usually share, like, you know, I have sent it to Francisco, I sent it to Betsy, the previous ones as well. And then we ask that you share with your networks. I know, and so for the other, we also send email blasts to every single district in the state. We also send it out to news listservs and other places, and also into a database of community organizations. But if anyone here would like just to get it themselves, I just take your email and ask our IT person to add you to the email blast.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? That is a lot of stuff that is coming out of CERC. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, then if there's no more questions for Nitsa, I think we can move on to Betsy, who will just talk a little bit and about the innovative work groups that have been happening. So I am going to share my screen again. Thank you, Nitsa.
So Lisa, I just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I know that she's a hard person to get a hold of because she's such a busy person. So thank you, Nitsa. I also want to just recognize there's Jane Hampton. She is one of our partners in terms of what the whole grant. Jane was here before, and Jane's doing incredible work in terms of meeting family needs, particularly families who had needs of special needs students, and has been doing an incredible amount of work. Our other partner is Judy Carson, who's out there someplace and has done yeoman's work in terms of holding up family engagement in Connecticut. And I also want to recognize Ann Henderson, who is she is our thought leader, nationally known, and really comes in and just, she kind of blends in the crowd sometimes, but make no mistake, her imprint is incredible and has always helped us to move forward. So thanks, everyone. So my job is to just talk about the innovation working groups. And it was when we met, I think in last February for our council meeting. And earlier on, when I was meeting with parents just to plan things, one of the things that I heard from parents consistently was that we really want to be part of a council, but we also want to see some action. We want to see something happen as a result of thinking about good thoughts, or just knowing what could happen when people, really committed people, are together. And so in October, thinking, let's see, how could we make this happen? How could we do this kind of groundswell of possibility? We put out a letter to everyone in the innovation on our membership for thinking about if they wanted to participate in kind of these action-oriented or work groups. And lo and behold, many people did respond. And so in October, our innovation working groups began to meet, and they really spent a lot of time together in terms of thinking about, discussing mostly about barriers. So I know that needs to talk a lot about barriers. Donna talked about, what happens as far as, and are there barriers that prevent access from families, authentic access to whether it's schools, information, and are there barriers even developing real partnerships among school folks and parents? So people spend time thinking about, are there challenges? What are they? If we were to develop a proposal, what might that look like? And do a little research in terms of what they thought was important. Now, the important piece about the innovation working groups is that they represented our stakeholders. In other words, people who are, professionally involved in family engagement, but also the parent advisors, our parent consultants as membership. And so thinking about what would this look like and what would we propose? And so the 3 working groups that really people came up with, actually, I'm going to be honest, I think I came up with the 3 working groups, but I tried to make them as broad as I could in terms of meeting the needs of our overall grant. And the 3 working groups that we talked about were communication, parent leadership and dual capacity, and links to learning. And so people, again, came together, Zoom time, they really were committed in the works that they were doing, and came up with proposals, came up with ideas that perhaps we had not thought about in the beginning when we wrote the grant. And so it was important for us to consider some of the thoughts and the proposals that people were putting forward. And the idea was to submit a proposal to leadership in April, and everyone did. To their credit, everyone did. They were in different forms, and to leadership's credit, they said, we will definitely honor the work that people have been thinking about as far as the proposals. It will be integrated into the strategic plan, and we're going to make it happen in some way, shape, or form. So some of them have budget implications and it may be pieces, but the thought is, and the goal is, to implement what people are proposing and the thoughts that they had about meeting these challenges of reducing barriers and again, aligning with the work that we do as far as our family engagement. So today we have 3 people here who will be talking about the proposals. We're going to give them a few minutes to talk, and then we're going to stop for a second. If you have any questions, we're going to let you let people ask questions in the chat, and folks can respond. So the first person we're talking about capacity building and parent leadership is Alicia Thompson, and I know she's here. And if she can just show herself and talk about what your thoughts were in the group, how you came up with your idea, and some of the partnership things that you did together. So is Alicia here?
Alicia is here, but Alicia, I don't want to speak for you. I know you're picking up your daughters from the school bus. Do you want me to go ahead and step in, and I got you, so you could just focus on handling that business? Is that good? Do you want me to do this for you?
That's okay. That's fine. I really wanted to still do it because this is so important to me. That's why I'm literally at the bus stop at the meeting. But if you wanted to, I definitely don't mind.
Well, why don't I'll do the lion's share, and please chime in. And Kwesi, I'm going to ask you too as well. If you two want to step in, correct me, add anything, please do. But so that you can focus on your task at hand, I'll go ahead and do this for you.
Francisco?
Yeah.
Could I just suggest we stop sharing the screen so people can see faces during this conversation? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, definitely. I'm glad you said that. That wasn't me. I wasn't sharing to my knowledge. All right, cool. So I'm going to do this part for the roundtable. Our crew called ourselves the roundtable after a while. Our process was basically from October to February, we had about 10 meetings that were just getting into the work that Betsy kind of introduced for everybody here, putting proposals together. And what happened was soon after starting to meet, we realized there were 2 kind of focal points of the dual capacity / parent leadership roundtable, and one was around data and data collection, and the other one had to do with trainings. And interesting nuances to the data. What came out for data, it wasn't just about how do we get another survey in front of families or schools, but more how do we reconceptualize data collection and parents' role in creating the surveys, and parents being the ones who are having questions that they want to have answered, right? So challenging that notion of parents as just subjects or informants for data collectors, right? The other thing was for trainings, what came out of one of our members who works in school, he was saying, you know, it's really problematic that folks who go through education and become teachers are not trained in partnership with parents, that they go through this whole process and they study education and stuff, but they're not equipped on how to build actual relationships that are productive and respectful. And then so they get into the schools, they get into buildings, and then we expect them to start developing all these relationships, and quite frankly, they just don't know how, and they're terrified of the prospects. So the idea of training came around not necessarily focusing on parent leadership development trainings, but on training teachers on how to receive and partner with parents. So those were us kind of turning those 2 notions of data and trainings on their head. That being the case, we created one proposal that had two parts. So the two parts were one for data and one for training. Let's see if I could do this here. I put a link in there that should be to a Google Doc for our proposal. Each section had the following parts. So a narrative as to why the particular proposal is important, an area on a goal or focus points, objectives, in other words, spelling out what we aim to do, and possible actions that we want CFSP leadership to consider taking. So, Kwesi, I want to thank you for your time and meeting with me the other day. Kwesi and I were putting some bullets together on why this is an important action. These are important because they connect capacity building for parents and educators, and these also help CFSP get a better understanding of what is happening or what needs to happen around family engagement across Connecticut. Also, why is it important for why is it an important family engagement strategy? These strategies in the proposal put parent leadership front and center and involves both parents and educators working in partnership in the spirit of dual capacity. So we don't just put dual capacity as an end goal we want to work towards. I want to give Leona and Jen Lucier at CPAC a shout out, because from the very, very, very beginning, when we started talking about an advisory council and creating of an advisory council, they challenged us to really say, in the creation of an advisory council or in the creation of any project or initiative, that's part of the process to get to your end goal. You don't just say dual capacity is something you want to hope to do someday down the road once everything is perfect. No, you bring parents in at the very beginning, and they should be informing your kind of procedures from jump. So I want to give CPAC a shout out for that. And I'm connecting it specifically to this and why we think the strategies in this proposal are important family engagement strategies. What we expect will happen: we expect CFSP leadership to review this proposal and to inform us of their implementation process regarding the different parts within each section. That comes from members of this roundtable. So now I want to again open it up to Kwesi and Alicia if there's anything that I didn't capture in my presentation here that you all want to speak to.
Okay. Now, Kwesi, I also had you down. Thank you, Francisco, so much. Kwesi, I also had you down as far as talking about communication as well. Are you talking about communication?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will be talking about communication also. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will be talking about communication also. But I'd like to give the floor to Alicia Thompson, who was part of us throughout. It was only because of a couple of hindrances yesterday that she couldn't make it. So Alicia, what do you have to say so that I can concentrate on the communication bit?
Thank you, Kwesi. So Francisco did an amazing job, because all the notes that you guys went over in the meeting yesterday, and I stayed up last night reviewing everything. And from the screenshot that I have from my phone, that's what he went over. So I don't have anything listed that you missed, Francisco. So thank you so much for doing an amazing, amazing job in just filling in for us on that.
Thank you very much, Francisco, on
Thank
that.
you.
Yep.
Yes. So, Kwesi, will you talk about communication, the piece that you worked on?
Yes, I will talk about the communication piece right now. And just like the other group, we also set about working starting in October. Took roughly about 5 months. Now, with the communication piece, there are two goals, or you might call it two focus areas. We dwelt specifically on quality interpreters and translators, together with funding, not just in Spanish, across various languages, so that parents will have simultaneous interpretation and be able to communicate with each other whenever there is a meeting going on. We found out that with quality interpretation, parents are able to cross bridges and do away with that inferiority gap. The why on that would be, as partners, it is imperative that one should be able to communicate very well with their partner. And with that comes equity. I must mention that we looked at this project through an equity lens. So it went across board, not specifically at a particular people. Um, some of the actions that we considered for the CFC leadership with regards to interpreters and translators was to train them, to provide funding for them, to create an online list that districts could easily access to use, and then determine what languages are most needed in which areas. So then you don't use the same language across board for everywhere. Now you try to pinpoint and pick on certain areas. Now the second goal or focus number 2 was the roles of various staff, both in the school and the district. That whatever they do should be with open clarity, that parents should be able to know this person and say, this is what this person does or what that person does. Because parents struggle to know whose role is which in the district. All they know is their children's teacher. So when that child changes grade, now they are lost again. With an increased knowledge of school roles, functions, and processes, it will be easy to help all children succeed. Again, we found out that the possible actions to use are to create guidelines or templates for districts to use, and the guidelines will include the process and the various roles, and the processes to include formal and informal ways to communicate. Now, the borderline or the basic thing was that communication is a very integral part of any partnership, and therefore, for anything to succeed, there should be open and honest communication from both sides, especially the school side. They should be able to be open and be welcoming to the parents, make room for them by way of telling them this is what is going on, this is what is taking place, this is how we are going to do it, but how do you think we can approach this? And by opening those lines of communication, we should be able to do a better job. So that is what we have for you. Communications group, is there anything else that we need to add? And I hope I did it well.
Quasi, thank you so much. That I know that trying to communicate 8 months worth of work in probably 5 minutes in terms of all the work that you're doing is not an easy task. We have one more, and then I'll let a little bit of time if people have any comments. What I would like to do is make sure that people give a thumbs up and a round of applause for what people have been doing and the commitment that they have been making, and just, identifying those important things. The last group, and this was a group that I was involved with, we were pretty small but mighty, I would say. And Ann Henderson is going to talk about the group that we had as far as links to learning. So Ann, I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate the dual capacity parent leadership group and the communications group for their really deep and thoughtful work in laying out what is a clearly urgent issue in our communities and some very constructive ways to go about approaching that. Our Small but Mighty Linking to Learning group started out with like this huge idea of how do we transform ordinary traditional family engagement into something that's much more linked to what children are learning and doing in class, and really gives parents a window on the classroom and lots of strategies to use at home to guide their kids and monitor their progress. And that was like a big bite to chew. And we talked for a while about producing a series of videos of parent-teacher conversations around learning, because there's so much research that shows that kind of close parent-teacher collaboration really has a powerful, sustained impact on kids' learning. But then Cynthia Zingler, who I know has been in and out of our meeting today, she has a daughter to pick up and take someplace, but she's the family engagement coordinator in Vernon, Connecticut, came up with another idea that we really jumped onto, which is the idea of a welcoming university that would train and develop the capacity of school staff to create a welcoming, inclusive culture of family engagement, and how important that is for those frontline staff. In Danbury, they call them the officers of first impressions. The school resource officers, the people who sit in the office, and others, bus drivers and others who represent the school in so many ways, and how we can develop their capacity to create a more welcoming environment. And then we started another round of thinking about what are the schools that are probably the least welcoming and most confusing to families are high schools, the final frontier. And Betsy reminded us that way back in the January of whatever year that was, long before COVID, when we all met, and we're talking about what we're going to do with this opportunity of a federal grant. People said, many of them, don't forget the high schools. And so we thought, why not take that welcoming university idea to the high school level first, rather than starting with the early grades and moving it up and somehow it never gets to high school. Let's start with high schools. And let's think about what are the necessary components of a welcoming high school culture. There has to be that initial welcoming, but then if we follow Karen Mapp's research on the joining process, there needs to be an honoring component where we're signaling respect to families, building relationships with them, giving them voice, and then connecting them to what their kids are actually learning and doing in school, what their program is, how to monitor their progress. And so that's what we've decided to work on, but we're not quite as far along as the other groups in terms of having a final draft proposal to present. And one of the reasons is that the first part of how we describe ourselves, small but mighty, we're too small. We need more people to help us with this project. There are only 4 or 5 of us. And so I'm hoping that some of you might be inspired. I did see some heads nodding to join us. We're going to, please let us know in the chat box if you're interested. I think we've got a lot of good ideas. We just want to sort of wrap them all up in a coherent package that's doable, that will start in stages. It's obviously a multi-step process to transfer some of our great big fortress high schools into something that's welcoming and inclusive for families, and really sees families as partners in ensuring kids navigate through that high school on time and graduate on time with an acceptance letter in hand to a meaningful post-secondary program or a career opportunity of some kind. So welcome. And any questions you have or comments, we would love you to join us. We need, I would say, at least 5 more people to come in and help us think this through.
That's definitely an ask and something that if people are interested in, we'd love to have you. I want to move things forward. I do want to thank everyone. So thank you so much for presenting. Thank you for your ideas. I'll make sure that everyone here also, I think I said before, but I will send out the proposals as far as the ideas so that you can take a look at them more carefully. But right now we're going to kind of switch gears, and we're going to go into breakout rooms. And I think that Yukio, are you kind of setting up the breakout rooms at this point?
Yeah, so before we go into the breakout rooms, you know, I just want to kind of bring all of this together and have people, you know, marinate in this information so that we can give good input and feedback. But, you know, we talked about the finalized values and long-term goals, right? Like student growth, equity. Oh my gosh, I'm totally forgetting. What was that third one? Oh, partnerships. Oh,
Yes.
it's too much information, too much to read.
Yeah.
So, you know, in thinking of the Connecticut Family School Partnership values, right? Student growth, equity, partnerships, and long-term goals of capacity building in the districts and also of the families, as well as making sure that, you know, all the information that we compile or you know, any, you know, links to register or any of those things that get a centralized location. You know, let's just take all that in. And then we're going to ask you in these breakout rooms, you know, what does it mean, right? When we fully reopen. I know that everyone's had, you know, multiple first days at this point and transitions from hybrid, and the hybrid schedules changing, and then hybrid to in-person, and then in-person to maybe back hybrid. There's just been a lot going on, and, you know, just taking a moment to reflect on, I don't know if that's possible quite yet because we're kind of in the thick of things still, but just trying to see, you know, what parts worked out of all of this that we can learn from and apply and, you know, even improve, right? So, you know, what has worked so far in meeting your child or your students' needs, whether it's, you know, the academic pieces, but also that social emotional piece. I think this last year has been really crucial. And, you know, because what we see now and what we see works now will definitely work when we go back into whatever normal means at this point, right? And, you know, but then also thinking about what are some of those challenges that haven't been solved for yet. And if you have any recommendations, you know, in moving forward, you know, let's take the good pieces, let's try to improve on some of the challenges still, and then, you know, how can we channel that into recommendations? And the reason why we're doing this right now is because, you know, we want to inform the future work of the CFSP. And many of our partner organizations are also a part of other, you know, initiatives across the state. And what we bring is the valuable insights, you know, from on the ground to be able to bring back to all the different, you know, stakeholders at the higher levels that can also push for family engagement or push for, you know, our students to be able to have experiences that ensures their growth. And so Jane's going to take a minute or two to just kind of talk about the CFSP, like long-term planning, but also some of the other initiatives that our partners are on where some of this input from us can be taken. So thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Yukio. Hi, I just wanted to share so that people understood, we want your input because we want to use your input. And CERC through Ingrid and Marjorie Davis needs, I don't know if you're on the team for Accelerate CT also, but there's a statewide task force called Accelerate CT and Leadership. is represented there, and they're asking us the question about what do parents and staff, what are they looking for to happen in the reopening of schools? What do they see as their future? Really kind of building this vision that they're calling bold for what will reopening of schools look like? What do families need? What do kids need? And so if we can gather some of this data, the leadership that are serving on this team can bring that to the state level to let them know what you guys are thinking, both in the community members, the families who have been dealing with everyday remote learning or hybrid learning, and really just to help us know what you need so that we can be preparing for that, and what you need as staff as well. And if you're family engagement people in districts, what do you need? So I know that all of leadership is represented on different committees. Just to give you a handle, Accelerate CT has 5 different groups. One, I don't know the title of it, is about academics. One is about social emotional learning. One is about summer activities and summer enrichment. The one that we are all on as leadership is community connections and families. And then there's also one called the digital divide, which we know there was at the beginning of the pandemic, a huge digital divide. Connecticut was really fortunate. We got a lot of money to buy hotspots, devices, all kinds of things, but we need to know where people are now because we're not convinced that everyone is taken care of yet. And so those are all the areas in which we want you to be thoughtful about what worked, what didn't work, and what is still needed for recommendations. Does that make sense to everybody? I think one more thing Yukio asked me to talk about was, I think NITSA did a really great job sharing the idea of what a work plan might look like for a partner. So she explained a lot of the activities that they have at CERC that they're doing. Every one of the partners has a work plan that has our activities outlined. So as we go through advisory council meetings in the future, we're hoping that some of the things we bring to you are going to advise our work plans for the future. So that, I think, was what Yukio was hoping to get to. Yes? Okay.
All right, so we have 5 minutes. 1 minute each from our breakout rooms. I don't know if you can do that, Francisco. Your breakout room.
We got this. All right. I'm the spokesperson for that room. Let's go. So our first question, what we talked about is, and hi everyone, I'm Jessie Livornia, Director of Partnerships for Windsor Locks Public Schools. I am an interloper in this group today. I was invited by Betsy, it's her fault. So the first question we had was, from your perspective, everyone had this essentially like, what are the successes? Overall, what our group talked about was that we had increased two-way communication between the school and home. And wow, that is enormously beneficial. We know that. So we want to keep that going. The second question, what are the challenges? So overall, we're thinking about health and wellness, mental, emotional, like all that good stuff of both of all 3 parties. And by 3 parties, I mean students, families, and teachers. Again, in thinking about other challenges, safety regarding physical health, physical safety, also with regard to COVID, and also racial violence. So, and again, with those 3 groups, teachers, students, and families. So these are concerns that we're looking at. And then third, what would we recommend? Overall, being clarity driven, so and information with regard to how is the opening happening, and bring all partners to the table, have teacher voice, have student voice, have family voice in it. Information, be innovative in the thinking of the reopening. Like, we have an opportunity to be bold in our thinking, and that's all that we talked about. So.
Great, thank you. I guess room 2, I guess, is that our group? I think that was our group. I took the notes, but we all spoke from a parent's perspective, so we don't necessarily have a teacher or other stakeholders. But I think we all found ways to support our kids, no matter what, hybrid or in person. But for many of us, we have kids in the remote, and just finding that, you know, in between classes or outside of classes, just letting them do the, you know, run around outside has been really helpful in trying to, you know, get through all of this. And those are things that don't necessarily happen when they're physically in school. They don't have like the run around outside, you know, when you're in middle school and high school anymore. And some of the things that we talked about as being some challenges was that because we were remote, our children didn't have access to the same programs that the in-school kids did, and just, you know, they weren't allowed to take classes or activities that are usually afforded to everyone, right? And so there was a gap in accessibility in a lot of things for our students. And some of the things that we talked about in terms of recommendation is, how do we reintegrate like the you know, the in-person kids with the remote kids, and how do you build them back up socially? So orientation for all kids coming back to school, not just like the 6th graders, the 9th graders, you know, or the kindergarten, right? Like for everyone, and doing a lot more team building, and taking care of, you know, the social emotional stuff before they can get to the academic stuff, is one of the main things that we talked about. So thank you. All right, last group, 1 minute.
So we talked about what went well. Opportunities for students to talk with and be with their teacher were very important, and also talking to kids about what helped them. Janine told a wonderful story about how her daughter came to her and said, "Mom, take away my cell phone. It's distracting." And then she had the idea of setting up a Zoom account and talking to other kids about what would help them. And I thought, yeah, kids moving forward as leaders. Then when we talked about the challenges, Jane mentioned that as it happens, schools are reducing time that teachers are spending with students and setting up more video and that kind of thing. And that's not a direction that students and families are happy about, because that time with teachers is so valuable to them. And then for recommendations, Judy brought up and everybody piled on about the importance of community resources and community partners and the help that they can offer to families and to staff for, you know, stress reduction and other kinds of social services and supports that families may need. Did I do it in a minute?
Thank you so much. All right, it's 4:30, everyone. I know it was a rush. I'm so sorry. All right. So last thing is we are, I think Lorimar will send out another poll, but just wanted to share the screen so that people can write it down. But our next meeting will be on June 10th. And you will help us determine the time by taking this poll. Do you all see it? It's 10:30 to 11:30, 1 to 2:30, 3:30 to 5. So please take the poll and let us know what time you are available on the 10th. I know it's the very end of the school year. And while you're taking that, just one last thing is that CREC will be contacting members of the advisory board about continued membership and what that looks like. You know, our schedules change, but we want to make sure that we either keep you on board for the next school year, or, you know, if we have to do more reach out, we know how many spots we need to reach out and fill. So they will be contacting you individually by email or by phone. Please, 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 you know, let us know if you can stay on. This is very important work, and we really appreciate all the time and effort and input that you have been giving so far. So thank you again. It is 4:32. Thank you for another hour-and-a-half wonderful meeting, and it's always great to see you all. So if you don't have any questions, you're free to go. Thank you.
I just have one
Bye. Oh, wait.
Yukio.
If we will be, in terms of putting membership together, so I'm going to reach out and see if people want to help out with that membership committee as far as outreach again. Parents did a great job last year. We'll send something out to folks again. But I thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
All
Thank
right,
you,
anybody who
Ian,
wants to be on
Donna.
that high school, linking to learning, welcoming university,
Thank you.
innovation working group, please let me know. We've got Jesse Livornia and Amy Yarborough have volunteered. Thank you so much. And we need a couple more people to help us. Anybody's maybe a little apprehensive about a kid that's about to go into high school, that might be a good way to have a support group.
And I hate to volunteer myself, but I will help with that as having multiple high schoolers. I will help
no,
out with that.
wonderful. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. And Donna, for keeping us on track. You did a great job.
Thank you, everyone.
Amy,
And
thanks for volunteering.
I'm sorry, Diana Planas. Diana Planas is also interested in being part of the group.
Oh, great. I saw her
there she
on
is.
it.
Yep, great.
I'm as well, so I posted it in the chat.
Alicia, is that you?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm driving and it's the Wi-Fi is spotty.
Okay, Alicia, so you want to be in? Terrific. This is where I was hoping for 5 and we've got it. We'll be in touch soon about a date, which we need to schedule.
Great. Thank you all for the facilitation and for taking notes. Really appreciate it. And be safe, Alicia, as you're driving.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Good job again. Thanks, Ann. I'll talk to you. Maybe I'll talk to you tomorrow, Ann.
Okay. Yeah, I thought this was a wonderful meeting.
Thank you. Francisco, thanks for hopping in and doing such a nice job as far as helping out Alicia too. That was really good.
So good. See you tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.